Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. It's me, and I'm freezing. I tell you, I'm freezing. I don't know what it's like over there for you, Bruce.
8 degrees here. 8 degrees here with a strong wind.
-4 here, and no wind, but -4.
No one likes a show off.
Yeah.
We're doing well. We're 20 degrees and rain and wet in the UK.
I heard you had a shower. It was just rained the other day or something, didn't it?
It did, and we've got a weather warning for tonight/tomorrow. So it's just crazy here. But
great weather for swarms, then. Fantastic weather if it was a swarm operator.
Yeah, it's enough to make you swear a little bit. I mean, until the jet stream goes north, we're just stuck for bad weather, and I don't know when it's going to move. So,
have you managed to fly
2025?
What's 2025?
The jet stream moves back to its original position.
Oh,
that's just what size? That's just as that big current stops. What is it? The bloody Gulf Stream. That's when that stops.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, I hear what I know what you're talking about.
The whole of North America freezes.
Indeed. So I was just going to ask you before Bruce just distracted me. What sort of size? Because for those that don't know it, Mark is selling swarms. What sort of size swarms are you selling or flying at the moment, if you can? And actually, it's a good question. What weather do they need?
So interestingly, our swarms we've sold recently. We've just completed an order for 100. We've got another swarm order that's just come through for some more. Weather-wise is interesting for swarms because most of the ones that we've seen on the market, and they are 450 size. So if you think of a 450 size airframe, that's what most of them are, and they weigh about 1 kilo to 1.8 kilos is the typical weight of a normal swarm drone. And they're running on 4S LiPos, but in the instructions for most of them, it says maximum wind speed is 8 meters a second, which is about 20 miles. Yeah, about 20 miles per hour. So, which is quite interesting. So, we've had ours out in windier than that, and our manual allows us to fly in winds that are higher than that. So, ours, we've rated the aircraft for 12 meters a second, which is about 26 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So, and they will fly in that. We did take out some single units because we couldn't fly them in a swarm as is, but 50-mile-an-hour winds does not bother the aircraft. It only weighs 400 grams, but it's got a 3-to-1 power ratio. So it is a little monster with the power it's got to sit there and just take the wind. Even in a 50-mile-an-hour wind, it will still make an 8 meter a second headwind. You know, it can still push into that wind at 8 meters a second. So it's doing really well. It's going to take a lot to bring it out.
And how long are these shows? How long does the show last then? Generally,
now that's really actually it surprised me. So because when we started doing swarms, we started talking to other operators, and we've talked to Sky Magic, who you may have heard of. Sky Magic's the ones that do shows around the world. They've done work in London. Yeah, they've done lots of really interesting stuff. Spoken to Flyby guy Stephen Sutton. He's really nice. He flies a lot of swarm stuff. The magic number for a drone swarm is about 9 to 10 minutes. They don't tend to go on for much longer than that. And that's because of the human's attention span. Our attention span is terrible. And anything over about 9 minutes and you're doing this and you're looking up, you know, as Bruce, he's easily distracted as well. You know, give him a little ping pong ball on a bat, he'll be happy. But it won't last much more than 9 minutes. He would get bored after about 9 minutes. It's like YouTube videos. You know, if you don't get their attention in the first 30 seconds or so and you capture it, in a video, you know, anything over 3 to 5 minutes, Bruce, they don't actually watch it, do they?
That's why we have shorts.
Yes.
So no, you've got shorts now. It's too cold for shorts. Far too cold for shorts. Yeah. So Chris's question there.
Yes, and that's an interesting one. So if you've got 100 drones, now you always have a minimum of a 2-man crew. The more drones you fly, the crew size will increase because the RP cannot monitor a swarm and look up at the sky. So you will have a main RP watching the swarm on the computer and literally have a competent observer with them, and then you'll have more observers the bigger the swarm. So, for example, we can fly to 600 feet. So if we're flying at 600 feet high, literally we have to have 3 people as a minimum. That's our agreement with the CAA. So if I want to fly 100 drones, for example, and I want to fly to 600 feet, I have to have 3 people in the team. If I want to fly 50 at 600 feet, I still need 3 people, just because it's about watching the swarm and what's going on and keeping an eye on it. At night, they're lit up, and then the light can go out for, say, 10 to 20 seconds, and then it come back on again, and you can keep track of them, where the RP can see everything going on the screen. They can see each individual drone, they can select one, they can look at it, see what it's doing. If they don't like it, you can tell one to land and stuff like that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a whole world of different sort of things, isn't it? But I suppose, having said all that, we should move on to the meat and 2 veg of what will be our conversation of 3 tonight. Oh, Chris, can we see a 450 at 400 feet? You know, it's Chris is coming with a look, just because he can't deliver stuff over Morecambe Bay.
Yes, you can easily. And what's interesting, remember, at night they are lit up. So, if you fly them in the daytime, you can, and by the way, our frames aren't 450. At 400 grams, our frame is not got a wheelbase of 450. It's smaller, but you can still see them. So it's all good. And at night, got an LED. So,
So China then. China, 1st of September. Get your orders in now for your last bit of stuff.
It's confusing, isn't it? What are they going to ban? Because they say they've got to weight things 7 kilos. But is that or and? Because it's not very clear in the stuff I've read.
Yeah. Let me share. That's why I pulled out, and we haven't even spoken about this. I've got it on notes. Let's see if it lets me look at notes. Yeah.
So what? Well, this is China proposing to limit.
No, not proposing. They're going to from the 1st of September. So it says it's capable of controllable flight beyond. So the first, is it or isn't it, is beyond the operator's natural sight distance,
which is all of their drones.
Which is all of them.
That's all of them. Yeah, and the maximum endurance time greater than or equal to 30 minutes. That's just about all of them. And then, as you correctly said, Bruce, that is the interesting bit, isn't it? Is the maximum takeoff is greater than 7 kilos, or the empty weight is greater than 40, etc., etc.
That's crazy.
Well, it's anything with laser rangefinder, anything with FLIR, or of course Starlight, or whatever the thing is. So, it's just about everything they produce.
And there's 2 versions of the story too. Reuters one says it's a pushback at the technological bans that the West has imposed on China, and then another one says it's because of the use of these craft in the war theatre in Ukraine. So who do you believe?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'd go with the Ukraine one as being
no, because DJI making a fortune out of selling drones to Russia and the Ukraine that get blown up and need to be replaced. Why would you shoot?
But they can still sell them to Russia, because Russia's part of BRICS as well: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So this won't apply to BRICS countries. So yeah, it's putting the foot on the scale again.
But will it? Because if it's because of the Ukraine thing, Europe would just buy them and ship them through Europe. So America, there's always a backdoor way. But
if they're not exporting them to those countries.
But they export them to us, for example. We'll buy them.
But they won't. They won't.
This is what the ban is. They're going to stop it.
You'll be banned.
Only Russia. They picked a side, basically. They said, we're with the Russians.
Yeah. No, they won't. Sending them to England and Europe and America. But that's largely the large stuff. But we'll see. There's going to already a couple of the US manufacturers have reached out. And in fact, joining us next week will be Blake Resnick, founder and CEO of Brink, because unfortunately traveling today. Because I said, well, come on tonight. If you want to talk about it, tell us tonight. But he's traveling. but I suspect we're going to see a lot more as people either the Chinese are either going to clarify this week, or people are going to come up with some other fantastic stories. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. And they can easily afford to do this, China. But it's certainly giving, in my opinion, it's giving the people that definitely want the DJI ban in America extra ammunition, because if your police fleet is a load of M300s in the US, you haven't got spares for 2 years. And this ban's for 2 years, Mark.
Whoa.
Yeah.
At this stage, it could be longer. They may renew it.
Or it might not even happen.
Yeah.
If you was an importer, would you right now have just ordered a shed load of stuff in containers to get it across or not? Do you know what I mean? I won't be waiting for the clarification. There's going to be somewhere that's just going to have container loads of M300s going to America. Someone somewhere is going to make a lot of money out of this. And you can see that if they say September the 1st, well, does that mean they stop the sale or stop shipping them? So as long as the container leaves like just before the end of August, and it's on the ship, or it's packed and loaded in the shipyard
on the west, on the ocean, yeah.
But it's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? Because if you ordered all these container loads of DJI drones, and then the US turn around and say, we're going to ban them, you can't fly them at all, you're left with a whole lot of, you'd have to ship them off to Ukraine.
Yeah,
which is fine.
Yeah, I think it's almost certainly a Ukrainian thing, and it's interesting that the chap from ex-Googler stood up and said, and it made me laugh because he said that Ukraine needs to develop cruise missiles. So, of course, who did I immediately think of? But then he also said they need laser range finding and all that sort of thing. And guess what? There it is. It's in this. He says this, and then it's in. I wonder if iFlight will follow DJI suite. I'm not quite sure what that means, Barton. Do you guys understand what Barton means by that? iFlight will follow DJI suite. I mean, all those
iFlight drones were seen, but the FPV drones, iFlight ones.
Yes.
So are they going to also stop exporting, or what's the guts?
Well, they'll be fine. They'll be okay. They'll be okay to export to Russia. And where were they going? They were going to Russia, weren't they? A lot of those iFlight. That was the Russians that had those, wasn't it? So there'll be no change there. But it's going to be interesting that I think there'll be pressure on. Does your police department use these drones that support Russia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I can. The headlines will write themselves in the next week or two. They really will. As I say, two blue US companies have already reached out to me to have a chat, so they're onto it straight away. It's going to be very interesting.
Doesn't bode well for the future of the hobby, though, does it? Because now the association between drones and warfare is becoming stronger every day, especially since that's building in Moscow was hit twice by drones. So you got to wonder how long before these is Gary. Oh, he's jerky. Well, how long before these politicians start deciding that drones must be restricted in the same way as firearms are?
Well, funny you should mention that, Bruce. So, in the UK, we've just passed a new law, and it subtly slipped under the radar.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah,
it's the 2023 Paranoia Act, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So the Paranoia Act, as we're going to call it, and I think, is this the one where Apple said if this is approved, we'll stop iMessage because we won't bow to one country's unlocking the encryption. So if this is what's gone through, all Apple users are in for a bit of a surprise because they will not change the encryption just for one country. It's just not going to happen. And Britain is peanuts compared to the rest of the world. So, but what the point is for this is, so this now lays the foundations for where they can literally go. There's a certain building in a city and just go, you cannot fly there at all. And it's not about creating airspace at all, restrictions. It's about just a restriction of even going near it.
In the vicinity is the term that they used. Yeah. They haven't defined the vicinity, though. Is it a meter, 10 meters, 10 kilometers, whatever?
Exactly. So the fear is that you could be in the vicinity of it. And as Bruce says, what is the vicinity? Now, people that come up with these rules and laws they don't know technology, because you could sit a Mavic 3, some of the stuff, and you could literally sit them a mile away. And it doesn't have to go near the building because it can still zoom in You know, the 7x zoom on these new Mavic 3s is astounding if you want to see what's
Can't
going
get them
on.
anymore. Can't get one in
Can't
September.
afford them. That's
Can't
why
get 'em.
that's why they haven't defined the definition of vicinity, because if you've got a zoom camera, then your vicinity is much bigger than someone else's vicinity. With they're leaving the door open. And the thing that concerns me is that rules like this, it doesn't worry me that they use them. It's when they abuse them. That's when it really worries me.
Yeah, well, it's going to happen, isn't it? As sure
And
as
it's the-
night follows day.
Well, it's the
It's
jail
going to happen.
term. Sorry, it's the jail term that gets really interesting. It's like 14 years. If you get caught flying your drone into one of these restricted zones, and you can go to jail for 14 years. That is scary. You know, you get less for murder. It's bonkers. Do you know what I mean? And it's quite scary because it's like airspace creep, if you like, or stuff like that. It's like, take Dover, for example. So Dover technically is in Class G airspace. If you get an air map, you look at Dover, for manned aviation, it is completely G class airspace. But if you want to fly a drone there, it's got like a big security airspace dropped on it. Now, it didn't have it for years, and this was just made up for security reasons. We'll just drop that over the top of Dover. It covers most of the city. If you own a drone in Dover, it's just hell. It'll cost you about £200 to fly there, and they'll let you do it then. So they just took that airspace and just did it. Now, this is a more subtle way of doing airspace creep control, if you like, and it's quite crazy. But and it's also very annoying because you can get a microlight. I can get in a microlight. I can get a 2-man microlight, get a pilot to do it for me. I can go up with a big Sony high-powered telescopic lens, point it down, and just take as many photos as I want with a camera that's far better than most drones. Go snap, 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 snap from 1,000 feet. And what they're going to do about that? Absolute squat. Absolute nothing. This is the problem when they bang on about, oh, it's for security. If you ban a drone from doing it, just get an aircraft to do it. It's not hard to get a microlight pilot to fly you somewhere.
Interesting, though. I think in that legislation, they talk about a person as well. So if you're in a microlight, you're a person. You can't be a person over that area. So that sort of rules out manned flight as well, doesn't it?
Well, it could do, but I'd love to see how they're going to prove direct overflight. And especially as that does conflict with the 1982 Regs. What about that jetliner that's coming to land at Heathrow or something? Could you imagine a passenger plane coming in to Heathrow, flying over London? It's more than likely going to fly over one of these new buildings, and someone's got their phone and takes a photo from out the window. I mean, the mess that it can cause will be astounding.
Yeah. That's why vicinity is not defined, because in an airliner, the vicinity will have to be much closer than in a craft that's got cameras and stuff. So they've left it open deliberately, obviously, so they can attune that to suit the particular situation. But the thing that concerns me also is they're going to have to advise people of these sensitive locations. So there's going to be a list of that somewhere, which means if you're a bad actor looking for places to surveil, there's your choice places in this list. So if it's security, they're giving away the location of these secure places where people can go and have a look.
Yeah, so it's yeah. And the crazy thing is, you're right, Bruce. If these places were secret before, and you know they've always been protected because they're kind of not really known about by the general populace, but all of a sudden you're giving it a nice little red flag. Oh, I'm over here. I'm over here. Look, I'm a building you shouldn't really know about. That's just stupidity 101. You know. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? They bang on about nuclear power stations. Well, they've already got flight restriction zones around them. It's already restricted airspace. There's no need to throw more rules at it. That's just stupidity.
And they're quite hard to hide as well, in terms of a funny little building in some small village is completely different to a nuclear power station, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's over there.
Well, safe houses or something, you know, must have safe houses for you know, that sort of thing. And you're going to have to, if someone flies over there, how can you possibly charge them with a crime and imprison them for 14 years if you hadn't told them that they weren't supposed to?
Exactly.
So you've got to divulge the location of these places.
But there's, I do know of one of the places because I used to have to fly over it quite a lot. And every time we went near it, police cars would start appearing in the lanes. It's when I was ballooning. It's near Aberdeen, and it's actually the pipeline. And So the police would just start appearing, and then they say, "Well, why are you coming?" And they said, "Well, I can't tell you." It's like, well, why is it always when I come over? Oh, I can't tell you. It's like, okay, yeah, all right then. But yeah, and that wasn't on any charts or anything. So yeah,
It's
I
like
mean, I
being
was only
debanked, isn't it? When they debank you, they're not allowed to tell you why you've been debanked.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. But it's
Oh, no,
but
they
they
just
would
lie
do-
about it. They just lie.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
It's
So-
amazing the way the world's going, isn't it? I mean, you can't live without a bank account, but you have no legislated right to a bank account. It's
And
like,
I think
it's
that
crazy.
will change. I think that's going to change here quite soon, actually. I mean, that they've shown, it's been shown how bad our banks are. But I've got a funny little story for you. So I know someone who was actually near one of the nuclear facilities in the UK. I'll leave their name out of it, but they were demonstrating a drone to a client, and it says, "Look, I can't fly here because the reactor, the station's just over there, and we're inside the restricted airspace." He says, "But what I will do is I'll just turn it on, and I'll just show you the video that it produces." So he turns it on, and he said, within 3 minutes, the police were there. It says, and it wasn't one car; it was 2 cars, and they were armed, and they were like, "Have you got a drone?" And he was like, "Yes, we just turned it on. We've not taken off or anything." And they were a bit of a chat. It was all friendly and everything. And then just melted away. Then they're like, "Okay, as long as you don't fly it, we'll go."
What a coincidence.
It's
Well, if we're going for these, we're going. So I go in my story as well. There we are. So there I was, about 19. These are 2 nuclear power stations on the River Severn. And you send an aeroplane off to do the weather check in the morning from, I was sat over here at Chivenor when it was still open, RAF Chivenor, having my cornflakes, having sent off the weather check. And on breakfast telly that we had on the desk, they had a reporter outside this one and talking about what would happen if an RAF jet hits one of these nuclear facilities. And I kid you not, as she was interviewing him, our jet goes in the background, and then the telephone rang. But anyway, that was another live. So I was like, "Oh shit!" And I was sat there, and I think, "Oh, I know exactly who that was." Oh bugger! So anyway, moving on. But yeah, but no, these places are out there, and as you say, some of them are marked on the maps, all the certainly all the nuclear power stations and stuff like that. But as Bruce has suggested, there's all sorts of safe houses and other stuff that we'll never and should never know about that are on there. We will soon if they're outed by this law. Absolutely crazy, isn't it? What is the world coming to? So what are we going to round up on the China exporting stuff or ending exporting stuff on September the 1st? What's your thoughts on it, Bruce?
I don't think it'll come to much, to be honest. I think money is as important in China now as it is in the rest of the world. I think it's just basically they're going to frame it in such a way that is more symbolic. It'll only affect a very small number of craft, and therefore it won't have a financial impact on DJI. It won't really affect many other people, but it's a symbolic statement as much as anything to show probably China's allegiance to Russia in terms of who it's supporting.
Okay, I'm surprised at the instant uptake from several Americans I know that, well, they can't, look at them, they can't do that to America. And it's like, it's not about you, mate. It's not about you. it's not. But it
can as well. They can decide who they want to sell to, and if it is, tit to tat with the American technology thing where it's this, that, and the other, if China chooses to do that, then that's up to China. It's got absolutely nothing to do with anyone else, really. We can all look at it and go, "Oh," and you just go. It's just like going into a bar and the barman doesn't want to serve you. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's their choice.
Yeah, Bruce and I know that. I think,
we do know that.
We know that.
It'll cost you. It's going to cost them a lot of money, like we say. They can't afford to hurt DJI too much. The Chinese can't, because they need those drones as well. So, if you take away,
well, they'll still be able to sell them there.
They've still got hubs then.
Yeah, but no, if they can't, but you imagine how much the USA market's worth to DJI. The Chinese can't really afford to stop all drones, like you say. That it'll be a particular set that they don't want them to have for a
The
bit.
ones that they don't
Oh,
really
my
sell many of
word.
anyway.
Yeah.
Here, Elon wants to yank Starlink from Ukraine.
Yeah.
Does he? I haven't heard that.
Yeah, he stopped them from using Starlink to perform some attacks on Russian ships in the Black Sea using Starlink as a guidance or as a control link. So yeah, but he's always been a bit anti-Ukraine for some reason.
No, I think he's anti. I think he's more anti-war than he is, anti anything else. He doesn't want his tech to be used like that.
I've seen him make some anti-Ukrainian statements, though. I don't think he is completely neutral in that conflict. There's more money in Russia than Ukraine.
Well, to be honest, the Russians did take the mickey out of SpaceX for a bit until he went, until he showed so we all saw what they really could do in America with the SpaceX stuff.
Now Tommy Bolsted's mentioning that FIMI, and that's another company, but that FIMI VTOL that's come out, the Manta, I think they call it. It's only small. It's for FPV, but it is. I think it's $220 with a flight controller. But it is amazing how technology has the price is just crunched, and people would never have believed. Who would have believed at the turn of the century? Would never have believed that it would get to this point. It is quite extraordinary.
I was there.
You would.
I watched a really interesting video. It was the history of the personal computer, and it was that guy Cringely, who from Silicon Valley. It was wonderful to watch, going right back to when the Altair was first built, and how that thing cost $1,000 or something back in the 1975, and then the evolution through, and now they looked at it was made in 1996, I think, and they showed it Intel 486, saying this CPU has 1 million transistors on it, and now we have like 17 billion transistors on a CPU, and the price is lower. That it's amazing how fast the technology moves, and it's not going to stop. And I think, look at cruise missiles. Back in the Gulf War, the Raytheon Tomahawk cost around $2 million per missile. Now you've got Ukraine bombing buildings in Russia with a cruise missile that's probably two orders of magnitude cheaper, and it's just doing the same job. And that's just how the technology's evolved.
We had grown-ups telling us it was impossible there was going to be a sub-$1,000 drone, and we know that's been very well broken now. And that was at a time when the GPS cost about $500. So you can see that you can see where they were coming from. But it surprises me that and what also surprises me, and I suppose what's bubbling around in the back of my mind is this ban, which tickles me a little bit. This ban, if it comes through, will directly affect all the people that are importing these large Chinese multi-rotors or delivery drones, and then pretending that they've designed them, and they're going to be off the list now. They're not going to be able to get them. So some of these delivery drone startups are going to have to do some innovating. They're actually going to have to work for it and do it themselves.
That would be really interesting if, you can't get hold of the Mugen airframes anymore.
You can't. You won't be able to. They'll be on it. The Mugen, all of that's on the list. All of that.
Oh my God! Hang on a minute. I know there's a UK version of that. Let me just go and talk to some.
But you can make them out of bamboo and balsa wood. It's not a problem.
I know where there's a UK variant. I know there's a.
At what price? At what price? Eh?
Well, it would. I think the price was not horrendous compared to be honest, for the airframe.
I'm going to. I can't say too much about it, but I know of one, and let me get the facts up for one that I know of that's just been used by a chum of mine who has just flown, so I don't want to misquote it. Now, of course, I'm trying to do this, and I can't see it quickly. Has just flown 5,215 linear kilometers, 70 flights, and 39 separate deployments, with a big Chinese multi-rotor, whatever, separate lift thrust. Where's this list to speak of? Well, it's the list. It's what they say, Barton. If you have a look at Hang on, I'll find the SUS News link. I've heard of that.
Anyway,
place.
Foxtech will take up the slack, man.
Yes.
Well, they're a Chinese company.
Oh, yes, they can't help.
Yeah, but it's not China that's banning it, isn't it? Just DJI? Is it the Chinese government that's implementing the ban?
It's the Chinese government, yeah.
China.
So
Oh,
it's
well.
just about everything that Foxtech sells would come into it. In fact, it's almost, you might almost say that this is this is a ban on Foxtech more than it is on DJI.
Yes, but
just getting their website up. So
you have to rebuild Foxtech airframes when you
do have to rebuild Foxtech, exactly.
So they could save you time and just send you the parts and just put them together instead of having to take it apart, then put it back together.
You would probably be better off doing that. Yes.
Well, that's
But they still have their own unique software, though. You know, developed from the ground up from Argipilot.
Don't start me on that.
He's going to start me on that.
Do not start me on that one. They are, yeah. You have to redo it. Right, I'm going to find right. Esio, where is this list? Hang on, I'll put a link. It's not a list. It's so I was wrong saying that, but it is the various factors that
so if an aircraft meets a certain specifications, it will go on the list basically.
Well, it's not a list. It's it's this. It's like this.
So we've got the green list, the blue list. This is the red list.
And the red list. That's what I should have put on there. What I should have put on there was that blast. So basically, it's capable of controllable flight beyond the operator's natural sight distance. So that's everything that comes out of China. The maximum endurance time is greater than or equal to 30 minutes, and the maximum takeoff weight is greater than 7 kilos, or the empty weight is greater than 4 kilos, and has any of the following characteristics. And it goes on to describe night vision, laser ranging. What else is there? I think that's about it, really. But yeah. And it comes into force on the 1st of September. And I wanted to just share.
Spares? Can we order
Sorry?
spares? Can we order spares? Is it just the whole aircraft, or can you order it as spares?
I think it's any of the parts. But yeah, we look at Foxtech. There we are. There's laser night vision. The first thing that comes there, that airframe there. There we are. The next thing that comes.
Buy while you can.
Oh, heavy lifter, heavy lift. There's another one that's also wouldn't make the list. There we are. So it is a ban on Foxtech in effect.
It really is.
I'm pretty sure Foxtech. Someone said they're in Taiwan. I'm pretty sure they're in China. What's it say? Yeah,
they were mainland China last time I looked.
Yeah, mainland China. So yeah, this is ruining, but it's not ruining their debt if they're selling stuff to Russia. That's what we've got to remember. They can still keep sharing it to. They are. You're right, Barton. They are. They absolutely are. Yeah. No. It's. Let's see what happens. Let's see which blue people come and talk to us next week, and then we'll take it from there. So what else have we seen this week, boys? What else has made the headlines?
Standard remote ID. Tim, there's a guy, Tim, who's pro AMA in America. He put a video up reviewing a ready-to-fly model, just a little foamy trainer, 1 meter wingspan or something or other. Had no standard remote ID in it. And I questioned him. I said, well, this is a ready-to-fly. It has to have standard remote ID as of the 16th September last year. Yeah. He said, oh, well, he's going to do another video to follow up. But I then tweeted the FAA drone zone and said, are you ever going to be policing the sale of non-compliant drones that don't have standard remote ID, were made after the 16th of September last year and are now being sold on the market without standard remote ID? Not a peep. Because I think, as I've said before, this is designed to fail. And they don't give a damn. They don't care. They've been forced into doing this, but they're not going to follow through with much. I think remote ID is actually going to be a bit of a fizzle. Sure, DJI drones and that, but if you're flying model aircraft, I don't think anyone is going to give a damn about remote ID.
Well, September's lining up to be a big month, isn't it, for the drone world?
Yeah.
Did you see the UK's remote ID thing.
What, the losing of the money from the Department
Yes.
of Transport? Or yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't this new Security Act lining up perfectly to give a reason for introducing remote ID? If someone does fly over these exemption drones, we need remote ID to identify who they are. And this will be the next step.
Well, interestingly, if you do a non-standard flight request for London to fly in, I think it's R157 and 156. If you're flying there, they will ask you on the non-standard flight request for, are you flying with remote ID? And I think even there's a couple of airports, and I could be wrong, it's been a while, I think the likes of Heathrow, although Heathrow asks for your flight logs after your flights. They want to know.
Can you deliver them in a shopping bag?
So I think they already ask, but you can just go, I don't have that. But because DJI stuff does pump out and they've got the DJI Aeroscope, it's just so they can check that it is you that's flying, kind of thing. I don't think they're too interested in what you're up to as such. They just want to, if it comes upon their system, they can go, that one we know about. If it's one we don't, we'll go and pay them a visit.
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah, to put on a whitelist. But I checked with Google Bard, the AI, and asked them if there'd been any how many collisions between drones and manned aircraft. And they put up, it said Heathrow, there was a collision with an airliner at Heathrow. I'm thinking, my God, this AI is so stupid. And this is the problem. People are going to be relying on this stuff now. And it's going to be such a bad thing.
Well,
But I bet it was authoritative in the way it told you, though.
Yeah. It said these are just some of them, and there may be more. Okay.
You can make the AI believe what you want it to believe. ChatGPT, for example, you can make it believe what you want it to believe. So you can tell it it's got 100 points. And then if it doesn't like the answer that it gives you, you can tell it that it lost 10 points. But you tell it that when it gets to 0, it's dead. It will lie before it's dead. It will change the way it believes in what you're trying to get out of it. It will come round to your way of thinking. You can do some really weird stuff with it. It's bonkers.
Oh dear!
Well, it's just a toy,
and did you see Spectrum are releasing their remote ID unit? There's a picture online. It is about the size of a small house brick. How I'm going to put that on my 260-gram DLG, I have no idea.
Well, not only that, but if you put it in any aircraft, as you know, you start to mess with the CG if you're not careful. If it weighs enough, like 200 grams, you can't put it at the back of the aircraft.
It comes with its own CFG.
So, and this will lead me to my next thing. So, in the UK, we've got there's a consultation going on at the minute.
Oh, don't start me on that one either. Yeah.
So this is about remote pilot competency, and they're saying the GVC is on borrowed time. Basically, they want to bring in the RPCA, and RPCB. One of them's meant to be like the GVC for basic standard scenarios, flying, blah blah blah. The other one, the B, that's aimed at BV loss and everything else. And as you read through all this bump, and it looks like it's come from JARUS, by the way. So I don't think it's from the CAA directly. It looks like it's come from it's come from the experts. Well, I'm glad they're experts, because quite clearly what they've written doesn't make a lot of sense. So they talk about doing a flight test, doing like an ATI flight test. Now, if you've got the BMFA plane A or B, for example, that should be a free ride, because you're flying full manual there. If you've passed that, that should be a free ride. There's no two ways about it.
I think I'm gonna not argue with you, but I'm going to agree with you. But say you shouldn't use the term free ride. I think it should be a requirement. I think it should be a requirement. I think you should have it first.
Yes,
it's not a free ride. You should have that first, and then we'll come and talk to you.
Yeah.
Then you can start cracking on with the latest stuff. And I think, well, last week John Parker, he sort of alluded to it. I did think about it a lot. We are missing bits of the continuation, as it were, or a more steady path for a youngster to start at their local model flying club, get their BMFA tickets or New Zealand tickets or American tickets, whatever, from their model clubs. We're not putting enough value on that experience. We need to put more value on that experience.
And I agree, because what's really funny when you read all this bump, so for years, a lot of the NQEs-REs training centres, we used to say you should have ATI in the flight test. So in the GVC flight test, and before that, it was all GPS. You could fly in GPS. You didn't need to have ATI. You didn't have to demonstrate it if you didn't have it. So everyone bought GPS-only drones because it was just easier to pass the test. Now, the UK AIB, so the Air Accident Board, they turn around and says, oh, you need to have the ATI in there. And the CA went, oh, that's a good idea. And what we've been telling them for years, they should have that, because the AIB has identified where RPs weren't used to flying an aircraft without ATI mode. And it's like, but we were telling you this years ago. Why didn't you listen to us? And it's like banging your head against a brick wall. Other stuff that's also bonkers is the RP has to check the fuel grade before it goes in the drone. Now, if you're flying BVLOS, right, I'm sorry, you're going to check the fuel grade. What, you want me to get out of the office where I've just been flying the drone from? You want me to travel 200 miles to where I've just taken it, check the fuel, and then I've got to drive all the way back to fly it back again? What kind of stuff do they come up with? Then they talk about bank angles of flying. So if you're flying a big VTOL, and you've flown these, Gary, they're talking about doing bank turns at 45 degrees. So they're talking about hard bank turns. Now,
Great one turns.
Right. But here's the thing. If you're flying those big VTOLs, they don't bank at 45 degrees because the flight controller is set to about 40 to 35 degrees. They won't let you come that far over.
So they're partially debanked.
Yeah. But you can't get such a hard angle on them. Do you know what I mean? Because of the stall and everything, they actually deliberately, the people that program the aircraft and design it, you don't want people going too far over, because if you're too far over and you're too slow, you just, one thing's going to happen.
Well, then the multi-rotor motors are saving you, and that's not so cool.
No,
it's interesting, isn't it, that they let you fly without having ability in ATI mode, when they won't let you, because basically they're going to say, don't worry, because your GPS will always be reliable, but you can't fly BVLOS because your video link may fail. You can't rely on technology in this case, but you can rely on it in this case. Inconsistency.
But they also say you've got to be able to fly distance without GPS as well. So they're talking about if you lose GPS, which is great, because if you've got a cube, you've got geo-reckoning. So you'll be a bit out, and it won't be perfect, but at least you're in the right neck of the woods, and you can use a landmark to get yourself to and from places.
You'll know the neighborhood to search for the parts.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
But
That's right.
You'll be able to use landmarks like manned aviation does to get about. Do you know what I mean? You if you're flying somewhere and you know where you're going, you could pre-look at a map and go, right, I've just seen at Church X. I know it's that big building just there in the distance. I'm on that side of it. I'm happy. Do you know what I mean? You can check that. You could be following a river. You're over the river. It's just determining what point you're down there. It won't be too bad if you're flying something that's got the cube and the geo-reckoning in it. You stand a good chance of being able to say, oh, I'm within a certain point of the map. I can go, I'm happy. I know where I'm going, kind of thing.
Is this flying FPV?
This is flying BVLOS.
Well, that would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but you'd need to be the pilot flying FPV in that case, wouldn't you? So what happens if you're using a conventional link from ground to aircraft, a C2 link that's just from aircraft to ground, and you come into land, you lose your video because you're too low?
Yeah, and that's one thing they're going to have to work out. That's one of the interesting things, I think, Bruce. But also, there's a piece where they talk about, my mind's jumped.
One of the things that makes me smile is that wraps potentially you need an operational safety case to put wraps on your. Everyone puts these fancy stickers on there. I don't know why they do it, but that would in theory mean then that you have to put a label on your drone for your operator ID. Then you need an operational safety case for your. And this sounds more like aviation. Yeah, you tell us to put a sticker on, but now you need to comply with another set of regulations because I just put the stick on that you told me to. So that sounds all right.
But not only that, so you just hit the nail on the head in the perfect way. So for someone to even do this BVLOS flying or do the training, who's going to hold the OSC to teach you to do that? Because the CAA will go, oh, Mark, you've got to have an OSC to fly BVLOS. but I'm doing my training. How can I do my training if I haven't got the? And how long is that OSC going to take me to write? And how much is it going to cost me? Because the CA is just going to bounce that backwards and forwards like 1-0.
And it was the 30 hours requirement. Was it 30 hours? I think it was a 30 hours flight requirement.
We're not flying.
I can't remember.
Yeah, we're not flying manned aviation, but I stack it up. We're not flying manned aviation. We're not flying Cessnas.
Well,
it's more hours. It's less hours to do a microlight course.
What are they? But really, what are they envisioning that you're flying? I think that's also the worrying part. Is are they thinking that everyone's jumping in like Pica? We found today it's the largest autonomous spray drone ever in the Everness has been allowed. I think it carries up to 40 kilos. That thing, or whatever it is. Did they envision that everybody's going to be flying one of those? I really don't think. I think they're creating a training requirement for a category of aircraft that's not really going to exist.
Well, it gets even more amusing. So you just hit another nail on the head. Category of aircraft, right? So they talk about category of aircraft to a degree. So hang on a minute. In my head, there's multi-rotor, there's helicopter, there's fixed wing, there's VTOLs. And there's a myriad of other little ones you can throw in there as well. But then, if they're talking about type, are they going to talk about fuel type? Because if you're flying a petrol one versus an electric one, let's say for an eVTOL, the way you look after them is way different. You know what I mean?
Your Dangerous Carriage of Dangerous Goods Act requirement that also came up this week.
It did.
That new regulations for that. Yeah. It's all there.
It gets so interesting. Like, got to carry, if you want to carry fuel, you want to do this. Is it electric? Is it going to be hybrid? What certification will you need? And if you're certified to fly certain aircraft, that means if I change the aircraft later, can I still fly it? Will it cover me for all VTOLs?
You get type ratings, won't you?
Exactly. How many type ratings will there be? You know what I mean? Will it cover you up to 100 kilos? Is it going to cover me up to 200 kilos?
Oh, 700 kilos, Dan. Wow, it's 700 kilos. I beg your pardon. I got that wrong by an order of magnitude.
It's almost like you could use a man.
700 pounds. Oh, that's better. That's better. Flipping Canadians.
It's just got smaller.
It is. Still a chunk, though. Still a chunk, isn't it? It's more than
it is. I was about to say it's carrying like a white IBC under it. You know those big ICBs you see, those white tanks that are on farms. I'm thinking, holy crap, it's carrying one of them for a minute then.
But you're just as dead if you get hit with 700 pounds as if you get hit with 700 kilos. So it makes no difference beyond a certain point, does it?
Well, probably not. And you can imagine that the rule will be, you've got to have the horizontal separation of 200 meters. So you'll never fly it near a road, but you never fly it anyway because you can't.
But you can fly. Manned aviators can top dress right over the top of roads. So why are we going to make bigger allowances when, there has to be some parity? And this is the problem. It's such a new field that sometimes they rely on manned aviation certificate or specifications, and then other times they go way overboard. There's no consistency to this stuff.
So,
this is, the one, sorry, Mark, I'll just quickly roll on out. I always roll out in this instance is down here. I know of one operator who, because the man from the Civil Aviation Authority came with his checklist from the world of manned aviation or crewed aviation, and he asked him, where's the emergency exit? So the bloke drew a triangle and wrote emergency exit on the side of a Phantom, and then tick, he'd hit tick. That's it. There it is. Tick. So, We should be going beyond that. We're at least 10 years into thinking about how these things should be regulated and licensed and thought about properly. We're surely beyond this stage now of just bending manned aviation regulations to or bashing them in to fit the use case.
The bigger the bureaucracy, the greater the latency.
And the problem is. The problem is, I think a lot of these people don't actually operate drones. I think the people that make the rules up, they call them experts. Now, I'm no expert. I'm really not. But if I can find fault in it, and I look at it and I go, this is just like Swiss cheese. It's got more holes in it than anything. There's something wrong here. And we've had these things coming for years. And one of the biggest problems, and this seems to be the biggest hurdle coming, is that RCA at the minute will not accept overflight of uninvolved people. If you're flying an eVTOL, for example, and you want to fly BVLOS, the one thing at the minute the CAA will want to know is how close you are to that uninvolved person, and are you overflying them? And if you are, you can't basically. Basically, they will not sign off at all, because there's a little bit of text somewhere that says could possibly, if happen, that your aircraft could fall out of the sky and hit someone. And it's got this, and it's kind of, until RCAA can shift that thought out of their brains, BVLOS is kind of screwed in the UK. And the problem is with this is when we had sorry to go back to this, but when we had the Boeing 737 issue with the 8 MAX, we're still allowed to have them now fly over cities into airports. If they were to apply the what if rule, that plane would never be allowed to overfly a city or an urban area ever again. Yet a drone, which is a lot smaller, a lot lighter, the what if risk is a lot different. It's like, the rules don't make sense in the way the CA is thinking. I'm not sure who's pushing the buttons there, but like if you had an eVTOL, and you've flown these, Gary, so you'll get this, and Bruce, you know that if you got,
I've seen pictures of eVTOLs.
Well, not only that, you know that a good size model aircraft. So if we had a good model size aircraft, let's say it's a 3-meter wingspan plane, and you're cruising at it'd be about 55, 60 miles an hour. And you're coming up to pass someone, and you're within 50, and you get within 50 meters. As soon as you're within 50 meters, we all know that they're no longer in danger, because if the engine was to cut, the aircraft will go past them. Okay, at 400 feet, the glide ratio at 50 meters, you're going past no matter what. It's not them that's the problem; it's the next object that's the problem. Do you know what I mean? You're always thinking where you're going to put your aircraft. If there's a problem, where can you put it safely? The person under you is probably the safest person in the world if you're moving forwards with an aircraft. It's like crossing the road. When you fly to cross a main road, and or a motorway or something, it's not the first car's not is safe from you as such. It's the ones further along. But at 400 feet, your fall ratio or your glide ratio is what you're watching for. So at all times, you're just looking, where can I go? Where can I go if I have a failure? And I would always aim for a tree, probably.
People tell me where to go.
Yeah, I get it all the time.
Absolutely. All the time.
Tree, it's like, where would I go? And part of if I was doing a safety case, part of it would be, if my engine's cut and I'm in glide, I'm putting it in a wood. If I could see trees, I'm putting it in the tree, because
sometimes you don't have any, because if you lose a prop, you've got it's just going to tumble and you've got no control. But the thing is, the regulators have backed themselves into a very nasty corner, because they've created this narrative that these things are really dangerous. They need extra regulation over and beyond manned aircraft. And they've done this on the basis that they haven't done a risk analysis. So they haven't even consulted insurance companies who've done the risk analysis, have all the data sitting there of how often these things break. And now they can't do that, because it would basically prove the narrative to be fake and false, and it would discredit them. So what do?
It is interesting. It's very interesting, and I just wish they,
But also, another little rant from me on it. If you create this sort of pilot skill set that costs a lot of money for you to qualify and jump through the hoops, much like our manned or crewed aviation compadres, then the price of that unit, that trained unit to fly your RPAS, goes up, and you start making the whole exercise less and less cost effective. And it will shoot down. It'll be replaced by the autonomous van moving on the highway, because there's nobody in there trained to do it. So they're going to price some jobs out of the market if they're not too careful with this.
Yeah, because in 2020, Elon Musk launched that full self-driving Tesla you can buy for $30,000, and it pays for itself in a year, and you make $100,000 in the first year. It's amazing. I saw where he unveiled that. It's fantastic. Anyone got that?
Yeah, I know. But we're and in this weird area where the drone pilots are the lower weight scale of things, 700 kilos or 700 pounds, doesn't really matter. They'll be very expensive. There's be no one to fly the EVD, the flying cars, when they come, because they're already looking at requiring 1,500 hours. Nobody is going to pay for 1,500 hours flying. That's the Americans want the standard ATPL flying stuff. So nobody's going to get to that point to work for an air taxi company that wants to pay you $1 a week, because if they don't pay you $1 a week, that doesn't make any business sense either. So the regulators are perhaps really stuffing their toes.
Even without pilots, even if you could remove the pilot completely from the loop, it's still not going to make money. It's just I went through the sums again the other day. It's just ludicrously impractical.
But unfortunately, our regulations are being shaped. So
I know that's because they don't listen to people who know what they're talking about. They listen to people who have got a dream or want to make money, but the people with their feet on the ground, with their their head on their shoulders, who tell it like it is, they're not interested in that, because it doesn't fit the narrative that's being created in order to have UTMs and all this investment and money and new jobs and prosperity. It's like politicians are just so easily fooled.
It is, and if anyone out there, right, this will sound crazy. So a few years ago, I was on holiday in Vegas with some friends, and we did the helicopter ride to the Grand Canyon. And we were talking to our helicopter pilot. He was from Ireland, and we said to him, "Well, why are you flying here?" He says, "Because it's one of the few places in the world," he says, "where I can get my hours up so quickly." So anyone out there that wants to fly any of these urban air mobility air taxis, and needs to have a helicopter license and have the hours, I can tell you now, right? You need to get yourselves to Vegas to do the helicopter ride. You're just going to the Grand Canyon and to Vegas Airport. You'll fly down the strip a few times over it, but it'll get your hours up.
Yeah, but if you think about it, there aren't enough. Scott, I completely agree with you that for multiple reasons that those things are not coming. The flying cars, multiple reasons, physics being the principal one, but there aren't enough our building opportunities in the world for the number of urban air. If you say, well, okay, we'll need 10,000 drivers of these things to start with, whilst the FAA wants this period of man being sat in them. There's not enough hour building opportunities in the world, but the youngsters won't pay. They won't pay. It won't be a high-paying job. It cannot be for the thing to succeed.
It's a bus driver for the air, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It can't be any more than that. And that's where the advantage of drones and this technology comes, isn't it? It's getting rid of the man paying the man. So if we try and hamper it with rules and regulations that demand a highly skilled man, none of it will make sense. So
why don't they have the same sort of regulations for delivery drones? Someone got to be responsible for it, sitting in an office somewhere and watching all the screens. Why don't they have to have so many hours and so forth? Wing have got one guy looking after 10 drones or something. How are you going to do that if something goes wrong? You can't manage 10 drones at one time when a solar flare takes out GPS. There's not enough power lines in Australia to do precautionary landings on.
Yes, that was very accurate, though. Very, very, very accurate. You've got to give it that. Look, I'm going to try and end this one in an hour. So we've got 1:30 to discover or see anything else that's caught your eye as we've gone past.
If you fly DJI FPV with the Integra goggles, you've got remote ID, whether you want it or not. Yeah,
is Integra goggles the new goggles or something?
They've got GPS in the goggles, so they can do the full standard remote ID thing.
So would you recommend a safety device then, Bruce?
What, tinfoil?
My tinfoil hat.
No, from now on, my remote ID safety device is one that spoofs your location.
Yes, but you're not allowed to. It's terrible, bad thing to do.
Terrible,
you wouldn't want to do that.
It's a safety feature. It's a safety feature.
Enjoy the hobby while you can. It may be not around for much longer in the way we know it.
That's a good way to end it as we're coming out to the last few seconds. So,
I'm
dear
going to
viewer,
take
we'll
up
have-
model trains off the end of Heathrow runway.
Yes. Lay your track out on the runway. That'll upset them. Dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, we have more guests next week, but talk from the blue world. Look after yourselves. We'll see you again, 2100 GMT. Be careful out there, wherever you might be. Cheers.